Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. Today's video is going to be my Gameweek 22 team selection, and I'll be talking about how I plan to navigate my team for the next few weeks, specifically geared around looking at double game weeks 22 and 23, what my planned moves are, and then also how I've planned around already preemptively to navigate around blank game week 25 and the potential impacts of maybe a double in that week and what my plans are going forwards. I know a lot of people have been making chip strategy videos, but really, to be quite honest with you, I don't see myself using chips until game week 29 and beyond. So the idea that I'm going to have a chip plan set in stone in game week 22 when we've got plenty of game weeks to go, plenty of injuries to probably see in the future that I can't foresee now, and a lot of impacts from other competitions affecting some of our players, just means that I'm not really going to even contemplate chip strategy for now. So the idea, of course, is mostly to look maybe medium term and actually look at the blank game week 25, right? Because you got Man United versus Brentford, Newcastle versus Brighton. Those games would have been called off when it comes to FPL in blank game week 25. The impact of that is we probably have a week where I wouldn't advise anyone going for a free hit. If you think about a lot of our team structures now, we're relying heavily on United defense and Newcastle defense. You're going to take that off the board. So of course, even from the pool of available defenders that week, it's already very, very dull. A lot of people own potentially one Arsenal defender, but a lot of people have been actually thinking instead to actually go for a triple Arsenal attack. And if you've incorporated a structure where you have a triple Arsenal attack, the only team with defense that's actually worth looking into is probably going to be City for that week. And ultimately, you don't really want to have more than one City defender between Ederson and let's say a defender. So I would actually prefer, of course, having a structure where you maybe have KDB plus Mahrez and Haaland, obviously, or just simply have Mahrez plus Haaland and then actually go for a defender in that structure. As far as Brentford and Brighton, these are assets, or teams rather, that players have already invested assets into, such as Tony, Mitoma, and March. That's obviously going to be a little bit different from my team. I deliberately didn't go into assets like Tony and Mitoma because of the impacts and the high chance that there was going to be a blank game week 25. I instead actually went into Nonto last week, which has actually helped me out tremendously for game week 22, because I think I will be a little bit ahead despite actually losing one transfer, because I have that Nonto transfer in my team, and then I can kind of play around with my team structure for blank game week 25 from that point of view. So with game week 22, just a little bit of insight in terms of game week 21. Unfortunately, I was not able to react to the deadline news in 21, so I actually kept Kepa on the bench, and I also kept Trent as a starter. So because I didn't get the ability to react to the Trent news as I was actually playing a football match at the time, what happened was Trent actually didn't start. We got a rumor that he would be benched, and so was Darwin. So based on that situation, I probably would have actually played Kepa ahead of him, because as I've been saying in the recent videos, specifically on the cheat sheets, that I think Darwin is actually the key to the Liverpool offense. And I think anytime he's been playing this season, this Liverpool team looks much better. You can also see the underlying stats being supportive of Darwin, but it just suggests that he's actually the true outlet that this Liverpool team can actually rely upon. Whereas with Gakpo and Salah playing, I haven't really seen much. I mean, more recently, we've actually really only seen Oxlade-Chamberlain score a goal, and that's pretty depressing, I think, if you're a Liverpool fan just looking at their attack. Why I have a Liverpool defender, I can't really justify it, but hopefully the chances of a double game week 25 for Liverpool will be quite interesting. Hard to kind of justify why I've gone for Trent. It's clearly been a mistake the last few weeks, and it's really been biting me, but I still think he looks good from the attacking point of view. The defense, of course, is just something else to be mentioned, and Jurgen Klopp has been quite tempted to, I would say, bench him, and also at times take him off very, very early. So that is going to have impacts on how good Trent is as a pick. He just simply isn't very good. But I've made that decision, and unfortunately I have sort of bigger fish to fry in my team, and that's kind of the structure I have. I would say it was a net 8 or -7 last week, because I probably would have actually played Shaw over Trent, which would actually meant me getting Shaw 0 points, and then Kepa's points over Ward. But nevertheless, I made the mistake, so therefore I have a red arrow, and I'm sitting around 220k in the world. The idea, of course, for game week 22, though, is I'm quite well planned, or well set rather, with Nonto in the team, and I'm going to play around Kepa, of course, starting, and therefore putting Mitrovic and Andreas on the bench. Now, the last time Fulham and Chelsea played, we actually saw that Chelsea were pretty woeful. Chelsea have had some major deadline day transfers in terms of Enzo coming in. I hope that he's able to start. We also have some additional impacts with the Chelsea team where, you know, someone like João Felix, I think, is ready to play again. Mudryk also looked quite interesting, but that doesn't really say much about the Chelsea defense. That's going to be a bit of a worrisome thing to just see how they actually cope versus a team like a kind of Fulham with Mitrovic, because we saw someone like Vinicius do well when Mitrovic was out in that game because of suspension. So it does feel feel a little bit weird to be dropping Mitrovic, but I think it just makes sense. I still would actually quite prefer playing Trent over Mitrovic, and that's why I've kind of kept Trent in the team, kept in the team, kept Trippier, White, and Shaw as well, because they're very easy locks for the team. I did mention on Twitter that I have some concerns over White. I think the concerns have been a little bit abated by Tomiyasu playing in that sort of FA Cup game versus City where they actually lost eventually 0-1. Now, White wasn't actually called on as a substitute, and that might even suggest that potentially Tomiyasu is taking up the first or the starting position in the team, but I'm not going to make that transfer out of White this week. I think it makes sense to pull the trigger on a White transfer if, let's say, he's no longer first choice, or if we continue to see some very early substitutions of him in the next week, where you have this double, where it would be more impactful to make a move around a third Arsenal player and to rejig the lineup, because I already have arguably some issues with Saka Martinelli when you have more appealing options in Nketiah and Odegaard, specifically Odegaard over Martinelli because of the kind of minutes issue that Trossard brings towards Martinelli in that sort of position. We already saw Trossard come on and look rather exciting as a substitute, but I don't think Martinelli is going to lose his starting position. However, it just has impacts on whether Martinelli is going to be a better asset than Odegaard, and I think the reality is he's not right now, which is something that we've also been contending previous to the Trossard transfer. So I think there's been a wider gap now created between Martinelli and Odegaard, and that's just something to think about next week. Anyways, as I said, so with Trent playing, the reason why I'm playing him is because I just don't see Wolves being that much dynamically different from the offensive point of view. I still hope that that's a chance for Liverpool to keep a clean sheet. They did recently versus Wolves in another cup match, and that's kind of the goal I'm working with there. De Bruyne is actually one of those assets that I think a lot of people might think about benching this week. I don't have any reason to deal with De Bruyne, because if you actually look at my midfield, I'm actually moving into Fernandes, and the idea is I'm going to spend my one free transfer by going from De Bruyne to Fernandes, and Rashford, Saka, and Martinelli will stay on the team. I'm quite happy, of course, with Saka and Martinelli for this week. I still think they'll start. No real issues there. Saka had an exhilarating game versus United, and I thought he looked fantastic in that game. I think there is an argument now that people are talking about whether Saka might be less explosive as an asset compared to some of the other Arsenal peers, specifically from the attacking positions. But I do think it's a matter of time. I think also whenever you will see a future game where he gets a 1 goal, 1 assist game, which I think is very probable based on Saka actually having very good underlying stats for expected goals and expected assists, and also just a general creativity in terms of his ability to actually cut inside, to actually score goals like he did versus United, but also his ability to go outside and actually look for a cutback pass. I think it's a matter of time where he gets one of those explosive games, and I'm still happy to own Saka specifically ahead of Martinelli if I think about the priority of the Arsenal players in my team. Rashford is going to be my captain this week. I think it's a little bit of a lock. Fernandes, of course, is another option that you can go with. I think a lot of people, if you think about triple captaining, I of course pulled the trigger early and probably erroneously on Holland, but I've made that mistake arguably, and I'm happy with it. I think the logic made sense at the time, but of course the result was poor. As far as Rashford though, great opportunity for a lot of people to triple captain him. Like, I can't see the reason to go Fernandes. Yes, you know, Fernandes has been scoring goals lately, but I still think Rashford still gets into the most exciting positions, and the opponents will still give him the scope to do that. So Crystal Palace, of course, played a rather defensive game versus United last time out, and it was quite a low ceiling game, I would say, for Rashford. But Rashford at Old Trafford is going to be quite interesting. I think that game is going to be probably a little bit more chaotic than the previous one in Selhurst Park. And then with the Leeds game, we've always seen Leeds push against United, and that game being at Old Trafford just reminds me of the kind of multiple hammerings that we've seen from United versus Leeds in multiple times past. And yes, of course, we have a change in manager since the previous Leeds game, where we have these kind of huge Bielsa defeats. But I have to say, this Leeds team is still very attacking. I think they still give away a lot of opportunities to the opposing teams, and I can't really see that being too different. I'm kind of reminded of the Tottenham Leeds game earlier this season. I think it's a great opportunity to really just triple captain, someone like Rashford or Fernandes. And for me, the easy answer is going to be Rashford, and I really wouldn't think about effective ownership there. Fernandes is going to be the transfer that I make, and the idea of going for the Fernandes transfer is really with a view to moving straight back to De Bruyne, or maybe simply just incorporating Mahrez into my team in the subsequent week, because I have the money to do that with someone like Andreas in my team that can be replaceable, and I can therefore move into a 3-5-2 structure and then allow myself to bench Nonto in the future. The reason why Nonto is such an interesting pick for me, because he also covers me quite well in blank Gameweek25. He's someone that I will be able to call upon, as opposed to if I went for Tony that week or last week rather than Gameweek Game Week 21 and actually have to either deal with the ramifications of Tony and his potential suspension whenever that comes, and also was blanking Game Week 25. So that's kind of why I like the non to pick, and I'm not too regretful of him blanking in the previous week versus Brentford. It was a very, very dire game. I believe the XG for both teams was like 0.2, 0.3, which is one of the lowest games in terms of creativity that we've seen in the Premier League this far. So that was quite unexpected for Leeds Brentford, specifically the last time out when we saw Tony get a hat-trick, but that was the reality. Nice to actually escape a game where the forward transfer I did wasn't great, but that no other transfer that was an available option was good either. So that's going to be my team plan for this week. I know some people will still captain Holland. I think it's unadvisable. Tottenham did look pretty good versus City last time out, but of course City came back strong in the second half. I do think that the City team is fully capable of doing very well versus Tottenham. De Bruyne was actually close, I would say, a couple times in the first half versus Tottenham to actually maybe assist Holland, and we've seen, of course, recently in the previous match that he was able to find Holland once again with another exceptional assist. And look, De Bruyne's potential and his ceiling isn't very, very high, but he makes a lot of sense as a potential transfer back immediately in Game Week 23. Whether you'd like to actually keep him in your team is going to be a separate question for some other managers. I know the idea of going from De Bruyne to Fernandes back to De Bruyne sounds a little bit silly when you look at my team structure, but of course, as I said, there is a flexibility of going to Mahrez and then just simply moving to a 3-5-2 structure. If you want to keep De Bruyne and maybe move towards some sort of defensive transfer for United, I'd probably say it's not so advisable. I just think the ceiling for any defender that isn't Shaw isn't very high, and to actually hold two United defenders doesn't seem too appealing to me for at this moment in time. So that's going to be my plans this week, to go with a bit more of an aggressive transfer out of De Bruyne, and maybe with a view to bring him back in immediately. So that's my plans for Game Week 22. Fernandes transfer in. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead.